Okay, cool. So this video is something that I actually surprisingly I haven't spoken about at all in the program or even in general, to be fair, and it's bulking. Something that probably doesn't get covered enough. Everyone thinks it's like this easy, simple thing, just eat more food. But there are a few little notes and tips that you need to consider when bulking. And it's funny, really. I haven't spoken about this, but it's a topic that is probably more relatable to me than weight loss. So maybe it should be something that I would speak about more. We'll see how the response is with this video. But yeah, look, bulking. In simple terms, you need to eat more food, right? That's pretty much the 101 of a bulk. The same way that weight loss is eating less food with a few extra things, with bulking, it is just eating more food, which leads to the but. And the but is bulking, as what I remember or what I know, is finished. It's not about eating as much food as possible. It's not going out smashing McDonald's. It's not about going and eating as much chocolate as possible. The traditional old school way of bulking is done. We don't need to do it anymore. The goal is to build lean muscle mass. That's why we bulk. That's why we do it. It's not to get as fat as possible. We do this by being in a calorie surplus, but with good nutrition. So again, like the whole reason or the whole idea around a bulk is to increase your muscle mass because you're in a calorie surplus. When you're in a calorie deficit, it gets a lot harder because there's less available protein and there's less energy to be able to build that muscle. So we want to be in a surplus to build that muscle and get as lean as possible. Unless you're taking these magical supplements that are in the industry, you're not going to build that much muscle mass if you're not in at least some sort of a calorie surplus. So there is small occasions where you need to be a little bit bulkier, lean out, a little bit bulkier, lean out. That system is built, it works for natural or people, natural athletes, and natural people who want to grow and progress in the gym. So these are the things that we want to cover when it comes to a bulk. It's like what to eat. So we want to pick whole foods over the junk calories. So again, like traditional, like when I was bulking or when I was younger, and I'm not even that old, but like we all know the traditional like bulk. It's like smashing ice cream, smashing chocolate, going out, eating loads of takeaway. We want to prioritize the whole foods. Okay, so things like chicken, beef, tofu, and there's simple ways that the same way that we do like weight loss journeys and we replace, like 20% beef for 5% beef, start to go for the 20% beef. We don't want to overload on the saturated fat, but there is natural fat within that beef as opposed to things like chocolate. Okay. So yeah, prioritize your proteins, chickens, beef, tofus, things like rice, oats, potatoes for your carbohydrates, and especially things like nuts, avocados, and olive oil is a game changer to your bulk. So typically, when we're looking at weight loss, we're still having the chicken, we're still having some beef. There might be smaller portions of rice or potatoes. This time, we're really homing in. We're almost doubling those portions. We're having extra rice, we're having extra potatoes. You know, we're having a handful of nuts, which we wouldn't suggest if you were losing weight. Have that handful of nuts. They're dense with calories. They have a lot of nutrition and minerals and nutrients that you need to feel good, perform good, and have success in this bulk. So we want to prioritize whole foods. I'm not saying that you can't have junk food or junk calories at all, but we definitely want to prioritize the whole foods first. And as always, I always promote this 80/20 rule. It's one of my oldest videos, or if you scroll back, you can kind of look at the 80/20. As long as 80% is whole foods, I would say that 20% you can allocate to junk foods if you're struggling to hit those calories. So, how would you train? So, the most important thing of this is nothing changes, okay? Just because you're bulking or cutting doesn't mean that your training has to change. You may have more energy when you're on a bulk, so you might be able to feel like you can train differently. But look, the most important thing when it comes to training and progression is progressive overloads. Okay, you want to be up in the weights, you want to be progressing in your lifts and prioritizing the things like your squats, your deadlifts, your bench presses, and rows. Okay, so compound movements, making sure you're increasing the weights every week, 3 to 6 times, whatever suits your schedule. You don't want to make massive changes. There's this old age myth of when you're cutting, you do higher reps, and when you're bulking, you do lower reps, but more weight. That's out the window. Training is so simple. You always keep it the same. You progressive overload. You train 4 times a week, and you see progress in the gym. You don't need to change the way you train. And another thing, and this is the most important thing, is that you don't skip cardio. Just because you're bulking doesn't mean you stop cardio. You need to continue cardio because cardio isn't what's stopping you from gaining weight. It's your food intake. The same way that you won't start to lose weight by doing cardio only, diet is the key when it comes to weight gain or weight loss. Your cardio is the difference between you having a cardiac disease or, you know, a healthier heart, and not your weight fluctuation. It's going to play a role, we can't deny that, but the role it plays overall is not worth the risk that you have to your overall health. You need cardio for healthy lungs, your healthy heart, good blood flow, mental health. Okay, so don't stop cardio just because you're on a bulk. You need to increase your calories. Whilst doing that, you need to track and adjust. So you need to track your weight at a minimum of once a week. Okay. I would typically do it every other day. I don't have any emotion when it comes to stepping on the scales, so I can just do it daily. So I can jump on the scales, I can weigh myself daily, not even think about it, and then I'll just let the chart just kind of like wave along. It doesn't really bother me that much. But if you are affected by kind of like weight and stuff, at least do it once a week, once every 2 weeks if there's some history or there's some trauma there with kind of like weight fluctuation. And obviously, if you're not comfortable with it, then there's no pressure there. But if you're like really looking to bulk and really looking to up that weight, then you need to track. Okay. So if let's say you tracked weekly, and over a 4 week period, you haven't seen any change, then it's time to adjust. Then it's time to look, okay, cool, what can we add into the diet that we're currently eating that's going to help increase that weight? Your body fluctuates, okay? So don't panic. Expect a 2 kg fluctuation. So if you're, I don't know, let's say like 90 kg one week, and then you're like 89 the next week, as long as by the week going forward, you're like 91 or whatever, allow that time to fluctuate. Zoom out after 6, 8 weeks, and then see if there's a trend going up. If not, it's time to change something. So a healthy weight regain, similar to weight loss, would be zero point 0.2 to 0.5 pounds a week. Okay. So slowly progressing that up because what we don't want to do, and this is where I'm going to tell you a story, keep it simple. But this is kind of like what happened to me or kind of what happened along my bulk. And this is why I say slowly start to progress weight. When I was a kid in school, I was always very skinny. So I would like force feed myself pasta, which is probably like the worst thing you could force feed yourself. But I'd be eating pasta like every single night on top of like my dinner. I would just like make pasta, scoff it down, and just like smash out the calories, trying to get as many calories as possible, eating McDonald's, just trying to gain weight. And it was very successful. I gained loads of weight. And because I was training, I was also growing muscle. But what changed and what happened is COVID then hit. And exercise decreased, and my diet didn't change at all. So I kept eating, kept eating, kept eating. And where I was so much more active before COVID, I then started to increase weight a lot faster than I was. So I was probably gaining the probably more towards like 0.5 pounds a week. And then when COVID hit, it started to be like kg on kg. And then I ended up being, at my heaviest, like 105. And then before I knew it, I was like out of breath, just carrying shopping bags or going up the stairs. Like I wasn't prioritizing the good foods and I wasn't prioritized on sustainable like weight gain. And that's kind of like something that you need to sit back and think because what's going to happen is that you're going to gain fat. The same way that when you're in a calorie deficit and you start to lose weight, you lose a little bit of muscle. When you start to gain weight, you're not only going to grow muscle, but you're also going to gain a lot of fat. So the thing is that you need to the slower that you start to gain weight, the less chance you have of just putting on fat. So let me say this again. So if you're slowly increasing your weight on the scales, you have a better chance at that weight being muscle as you slowly kind of progress your calorie surplus, rather than just absolutely scoffing your face, gaining a kg a week. More of that is going to be fat than muscle. because you've overconsumed, you've overdone it. Whereas if you do it slightly, you allow kind of like your body's process to burn the fat, build the muscle. There's a surplus, there's enough building supplies there. So the same way, like if you pour loads of concrete on a foundation, it just becomes this messy foundation. Whereas if you feed the concrete, lay it out, create this nice smooth foundation, slowly start to build that house. Don't just chuck everything all on it. So that's pretty much kind of like the whole thing of bulking. Again, I know it seems really simple, and I know like it's always this thing of just eating more food, but it really is that simple. And I know for people who struggles with eating, like I did when I was in school, it's all about just getting into the habit of slowly snacking. So I know this is crazy, and it could be triggering for anyone who's trying to lose weight to watch this. But it is very much a case of, getting into the habit of eating every 4 hours. Even if you have like a little packet of biscuits or something with you, every 4 hours, just get into the habit of eating, like 3 biscuits or whatever. Because then slowly over time, what you want to do is then develop those snacking habits into meals or food. So rather than it being, like a little cereal bar or like a banana you're having like every 4 hours, transform that into whole food, like whole meals. So then it's like your meal prep with your chicken and your rice or whatever. It's just getting into that habit of eating, eating, eating. And once you start to develop that, you start to see the weight gain. That is then essentially your bulk in a nutshell. So again, if you want a bulk, that's pretty much the 101. Eat more food. I don't have any specific calculations for you, because I think if you've been maintaining weight or you haven't been losing weight, then all you need to do is just add one more food group into your diet, see how that goes, and then add again. So if I was, starting to bulk now, I wouldn't change anything about my diet. I would just make sure that I was having an extra packet of rice cakes every single day, for example, because then that's additional to what I was eating already. Track the scales, see how it goes, increase it again if you need. Okay, cool. The rice cakes aren't working. I'm not seeing any weight gain. What should I do? Let's add a protein shake to it. Boom. Slowly just start to increase those calories. Don't gain it too much because you want to gain muscle, not fat. Boom. That is essentially a bulk done.